Hello everybody, welcome back to the Janus Project, episode 3 of the Jool program. As we focus on this missing part, we notice that it is indeed one of our landing gears, which is going to be a very important thing moving forward in our journey through the Jool 5. We can't have only 2 legs. Thankfully, it busted off not too far from here, so we can actually just kind of use our hover engines and flip ourselves around. This isn't equipped with any kind of aquatic engine, so we are going to have to just kind of do our best as a hovercraft. If this is your first episode in the Janus Project, we are not on Kerbin, but indeed on Laythe, which is why it is snowing, and our intrepid crew is making the very first stop. However, due to the intense re-entry speeds, both into the Jool system and into Laythe, and the depth that we fell in, assured that we were going to get stuck down on the planet. As we look at our information, we see that one of our solar panels is broken, and thus we can't retract, nor can it produce any power, which is a significant damage and a significant hindrance on our plan. So we are going to have to take care of that. Luckily, we have several engineers aboard, and because of the fact that we have our kerbals level up immediately as opposed to having to wait until they get back to the KSC, that means that we have an adequately knowledgeable engineer who can help us fix that. We are only 2,700 meters away from the broken part, so it's actually going to be a relatively easy journey, but because of the fact that I can't retract that solar panel, I kind of want to fix it before moving forward. So we're going to send out our 3-star engineer Joe Brett Kerman, who does an excited little dance before getting to handle the first engineering feat on the mission. And thankfully, due to Laythe's breathable atmosphere, she has the ability of taking her helmet off, which is going to make things a lot more comfortable. Noticing that the cargo bay is very busted, and she has the opportunity to repair it, but it is a time situation, so she can only do it every 15 seconds or so. So she did one repair, and then now she's going to focus on the solar panel. However, we are going to need 4 repair kits in order to break it. I thought I had put some in our inventory, but apparently not, but that's okay because there are 8 repair kits in the cockpit, in the inventory of the cockpit. So we did come slightly prepared, but seeing that it's going to take 4 of them just to repair a singular solar panel is not very encouraging, to say the least. I feel like, because in all my testing, I didn't, first off, it was hard to do a lot of testing because it did require me to, run the entirety of the mission because I needed to know, if I came into Laythe's atmosphere with a full tank of gas, that's not going to give me the information that I need to know coming into Laythe's atmosphere after doing the full interplanetary burn and stuff. So I did have to do the entire mission, and so something like this kind of damage is something I was not prepared for. So the lack of repair kits is a little bit unsettling. Thankfully, it doesn't take any repair kits to fix this kind of damage right here into the cargo bay. Unfortunately, this kind of damage is a little bit glitchy, and so Joe Brett ends up getting stuck down into the cargo bay, just clipping through the floor. And because of the fact that it takes so long in order to repair, and each repair only does a small amount of percentages changed, we have a lot of things to repair in here. The ship is actually very badly wounded. We're going to go ahead and get our other engineer out, Gleber, and she too is a 3-star engineer because of the whole trip gave her the experience. And so I'm hoping that by having 2 engineers, one of 2 things, or both things will happen, that I can fix it faster. We will be able to utilize each Kerbal's countdown timer and, get it done twice as fast. Or it will do more repairs due to the fact of having more engineers aboard. Gleber falls into the cabin as I'm controlling Joe Brett, who's getting very stuck between the batteries, trying to repair it, but unfortunately neither of my hopes came true. We couldn't actually repair quicker, nor could we repair for more, so just having 2 engineers in here is just too many cooks in the kitchen. And at this point I'm seeing that it's not just the cargo bay that's damaged, but a lot of things in here. The giant reflector dish is 3000% damage, and that's just not gonna do. And then at some point something explodes and all the battery banks are destroyed. Gleber is not listed as one of the casualties, however, she has disappeared. In the astronaut complex, she's not listed as missing in action or killed in action. However, she is just no longer part of this mission, and until we can figure out what happened to her, we are going to have a team of investigators on standby to analyze the situation. But it is becoming very clear that this is a little too dangerous of a craft to fly in this condition. And so Jo Brett makes her way down through the atmosphere back aboard, and the three remaining crew, talk it over and decide what to do next. And so I think the best course of action is to do like how we did in the around the world trip, and when something became too badly wounded, we send out a replacement craft. However, that replacement craft is going to need to go through the full journey that the rest of them did. By the rules of our around the world trip, we could only respawn our craft at a launch site if we wanted to get a new craft. Anytime else, we had to pilot it there ourselves. So that is what we're going to do. We are going to make a few changes because we can. We're going to throw on the Tylo flag that we missed, as well as the canards that the POV crowd discovered was going to be a benefit. So we put on basically the same thing that they have, and that will truly prove to be a benefit. It makes this craft so much more stable. Also, because of the fact that we are so far out from the sun, our solar panels actually are a lot weaker. We're going to throw a couple of these radioscope generators on there. However, I did not test this craft with them, so I'm not sure what kind of heat they're going to make, so we'll have to be prepared for that. Ropon Kerman is going to be the sole passenger on here. In hindsight, I should have thrown an extra engineer. That would have helped us out tremendously, but nonetheless, Ropon will be the sole journeyman for the entire long trip. But we are going to skip through the majority of the beginning. This craft can easily get to orbit as a single stage, but it was kind of fun to launch at night. When we initially launched this, it was early morning, so you got the nice colors of dawn and everything, but with here you get the night sky, the stars, and beautiful heating effects. So that was fun enough to include. But yes, Ropon Kerman is going to have to go through the whole thing. That's why we named this episode that we did. I was hoping that today we could have gotten our craft refueled and then up back into the orbit of Laythe, and then scan the planet for anomalies and biomes and best places to land, and then go land there, discover it. That was the goal for today's episode, but fortunately we are going to have to do the Laythe warp yet again. So after a refueling process, which was mainly automated by the Alcor pod, we go ahead and get that out of our way so we can continue on. Utilizing the examples that we learned from the POV episode, we're going to take advantage of that and utilize only our black hole warp drive, our OTP engine, to extend our apoapsis out of curve and sphere of influence. In fact, we're going to use this basically entirely until we get to the Julian system, because it is so good to just save the Delta V in any way that you can, because it's becoming very clear how necessary it's going to be. This craft is capable, but I would say just barely, and so therefore it means that a big part of our challenge in this episode, in this program, in both the POV and the third-person perspective, the IVA and the third-person perspective, how we fly this and how we handle the challenges that come to us, how we can think on our feet, and what choices we make will be the real challenge that we have here. But anyways, we're just kind of time warping, pushing our way out slowly enough. I'm speeding up the footage and making it a little bit easier to watch. But it did take quite a lot of time to just do this over and over again. But thankfully, after the POV episode, I got a lot more familiar with the process. Momentarily, we get a nice escape ejection after a flyby of the moon, but it turns out the only way to actually get the escape ejection is to impact the moon, so it's not worth it. So we're just going to skip that, continue on, and just burn our way out because of the fact that we're using 0 delta V for it. We're just using the OPT black hole resource, so we still have the several thousand that we need to maneuver around Jool. A lot more ease. So we're going to go ahead and make our maneuver relatively close to our escape into the solar orbit, because we want to utilize our black hole resources as best as possible. As we see in the top right, it's down to 0.17, which means we don't have a lot left. We do have a considerable amount of ore though, so we can actually make more, but for a full batch of black hole resource, it takes about a third of that resource, so I can at best, waste it twice before I have no more of that, and I am forced to rely on my delta V. So our decisions have to be made carefully. This entire burn took a very long time, so I did speed this up. This is going at about 1000% speed right there, and it still took about that time. But back to a relatively normal speed, and we're gonna go and try to fine-tune our approach. If we have to, an orbit around Jool wouldn't be terrible if it was a polar orbit, because we could spend some time mapping Jool. There's not really much to gather, but I mean, it is still mapping information. I feel like it still could be pertinent information for the scientists back home. But nonetheless, the goal is actually to get back to Laythe. We want to rendezvous this craft with the broken craft as soon as possible and get the crews back on board and back to work, because after all, this is a space race. Obviously we landed on a planet first. The POV crowd is still orbiting Eve. They haven't actually landed or anything, but so we have the milestone for landing first. However, we haven't planted a flag because we're not on solid ground. We haven't discovered the anomaly, and we haven't mapped anything, so they beat us on mapping though. There's no use in resting on our laurels. We need to get back to work soon. We go ahead and plot in a lot closer. We do get a Laythe approach, but I feel like the speed that we're going to come into it is going to be useless. The atmosphere will be fairly useless and may in fact just be deadly. We do have to wait quite a bit for our next maneuver, and I think it would be better to utilize actual delta V to accomplish it, because my trying to get precision maneuvers with the black hole engine it's just very difficult, and so I decided it's worthwhile to spend the delta V just to get some accuracy and some control. I decided to spend some of that ore to, instead of making more black hole resource, to make a little bit more monopropellant, not a full tank, but just enough to keep myself balanced and to make minor adjustments if I need to. So on my approach, the interception actually disappears, and I get the notification that one of my deep space probes has a maneuver coming up. And it takes me a little bit to remember why this is here, but this was one of my deep space satellite communications network powered by ion engines. However, this burn itself is going to be 38 minutes long, and I just, at the time of filming, I didn't have the time to do that. I didn't have the time to wait. Even at a full physics warp, I had to spend a lot of time working on the Jool project instead of, managing this thing. And so I decided it's just, it's a communications satellite. It's not on any kind of dangerous trajectory. It's not going anywhere. So we'll just let it be its elliptical self for now and just get back to our mission. So yeah, we're back with Ropond. We do have some monopropellant. We have no black hole, but that's fine because we are now going to be utilizing our actual liquid fuel engines. However, our interception has disappeared. I reset the target and I see that our closest approach is completely off now, and I don't exactly know why, so we're just gonna time warp our way. Sometimes the game fails to load that kind of information until you get a little bit closer. So as we see here, that information is indeed back. However, it does look a little strange. Doesn't look how it normally does, and Jool is all the way on the other side of the sun. There's nothing here that's showing that there's going to be a Jool approach, and that is because for some reason our marker, I guess, was set to the secondary orbit. I try to see if there's something that I did wrong, but after all of my maneuvering, I don't have to do anything. I just have to wait another orbit for it to come around. So we zero out, we see that, yeah, indeed, we just have to wait. So we are going to just go ahead and get ourselves back into position. We are going to fine-tune our approach a little bit so we can get a more ideal. As you see here, we get that Laythe approach, but honestly, I don't think it's going to be worth it to come in that fast, especially when Jool is right here with a thick enough atmosphere that we can go a little bit deeper and utilize our drag a little bit better, slow ourselves down to a lot more reasonable speed, and then from there transfer to Laythe. However, there is a significant problem here, and that is if we dive too deep into Jool's atmosphere, if we bring down our apoapsis too high, we will indeed capture into it. And this craft is pretty capable. However, a suborbital escape from Jool's atmosphere is a challenging feat, no matter the craft. So we are going to have to play this carefully. We do have our heating tolerance turned off, so we don't have to worry about coming in too hot, but the dangers of losing Ropond and the ship entirely are still there, because we are going to have to kind of deal with our consequences as best we can. But anyways, here we are on the Julian approach on a suborbital trajectory that will bring us down and utilize our aero braking to the best of our abilities. As we time warp forward, we slow down a little bit and pass by Tylo, I believe that is, and get a nice view of its icy plains and mountains. So I am excited to visit all of these moons and see them up close and personal, especially with the Parallax Continued mod and the likes. But anyways, first step first, we need to get ourselves captured into the system so we can stay and visit those places. As we come into our closest approach and get eyes on the storms for the first time, or Ropond does anyways, the view is a little bit muddied by the eclipse, but that is the eclipse of Laythe, so we're going to go ahead and take that as a good sign, Sailor's Delight sort of thing, as we get this interesting little visual effect due to the eclipse. It's pretty fun. So we are going to go ahead and prepare ourselves to come back into the atmosphere. We are pointed orbital out to begin with to utilize the flattest part of our ship. However, it's going to be quickly apparent that no matter what we want to do, Jool has other ideas. So it points us retrograde, and we're going to kind of rock back and forth until we can kind of get into a flipping maneuver. But with the camera change, it is clear that we are indeed captured into the Julian system. There we go, and our apoapsis is coming down very fast. We're almost past our periapsis, which is an important part. The longer that you take to reach that, the more dangerous it will be to slow down. So half that distance has already been covered, and we still have 88 seconds before we leave the atmosphere. So this is, I'm kind of on the edge of my seat here. We are slowing down a little bit, which is nice, but there's still 70 seconds left, and nothing is really assured. If we can make our way out of the atmosphere, then we can make a maneuver at our apoapsis to pull ourselves out again, or at least to a higher height so we don't have to be as risky to fall back in. Do get some beautiful visuals as we tumble through, but because of the fact that we are now as close to reaching the edge of the atmosphere as we are, and the heating is starting to dissipate a little bit until it's completely gone. I now feel a lot more comfortable, and our apoapsis is high enough that we are indeed safe. So once we get out of the atmosphere, we're going to go ahead and set Laythe as our target, make a maneuver at our apoapsis, and just start heading straight there. Obviously, this is going to take a lot of delta V, but we have 2,600. But this is going to take over, basically over 1,000 just to get to where we want to get to. So we will have to play this very carefully and make sure that we do have enough. It would be nice to use our black hole engines here, but the amount of precision we need here, I just don't want to leave it to chance. It's not worth it to mess up and then have to try again, or to have to then turn on the liquid fuel engines and utilize our delta V to fix the mistake anyways. We're here. We saved that delta V. I mean, we gotta save it for a reason. There's no point in landing on the planet with a full tank of gas. That's great that we can get back up into orbit really easily. We don't have to stop anywhere. We don't have to refuel, but we have that gas for a reason. So this is the reason. So let's go ahead. We get our solar panels out so that way we don't lose any electrical charge on our way. And thankfully we do have those generators running, so we have a lot less concern. We say goodbye to Jool for now and its many storms on the southern coast. There's a circular pattern on the front, and then as we pull away, we get to see the beautiful swirling natures provided by volumetric clouds. Such a gorgeous planet. I'm honestly, I'm not sure which is my favorite planetary system or moon or whatever in Kerbal, and that's part of why I'm so excited to do this project. And that is to see everything for myself, and to not only see everything the way that KSP intended, but to go into first person, to become the astronaut, to put my feet on the ground itself and see it for myself. So I am so very excited to find out what my favorite planet is. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and push our way towards Laythe pretty easily enough. We still have around 1,900, or actually a little less, but we still have a good chunk of delta V left. We have more than we need to circularize around Laythe, especially considering the fact that we can air brake. But the thing is we really don't want to follow in the steps of the crew on the last plane. I really would like to capture myself into an orbit first, into a polar orbit, and scan the planet. There is an anomaly on here, I'm sure. It's such a cool place. It's such a hot destination that I'm sure the developers would put something of interest to see here. So we are going to want to get a map of that. But even if there's no anomaly, we are going to need to know where the resources are, because we are going to want to refuel our craft. The current craft is out in the middle of the ocean, so we're going to have to not only get to them, but then get back to a shoreline. So we are going to need to know where the nearest shoreline is. So ideally, we don't capture and land. Ideally we just get ourselves slowed down enough to capture into an orbit, and then we get ourselves in a stable orbit. But given the fact that it's an atmospheric situation, we will have to just deal with what we can deal with. But I'm pretty confident that this plane can get ourselves back up into orbit. So if we do end up having to do a direct descent, meet up with the craft, grab everybody, get ourselves back up into orbit, scan it, and then descend back down to land at the desired location, then that's what it's going to be. That's actually what the plan was for the craft that's currently on the ground. That was what today's episode was going to be, but I feel like it's just more prudent to give them a better craft, and hopefully once I bring it down to them, to not bang it up as much as the previous landing. But anyways, we are now on our suborbital trajectory, feeling the effects of heating. It comes on very quickly before I can even really appreciate anything, and we get a nice view of Jool as we pass by, and a look at some volcanic activity with a little peek of Eve and Elu, and Kerbin back there. It's very nice. I just noticed that we can actually use Laythe aerobraking to change our orbit around Jool into a polar one. That was very interesting information. Going completely prograde was nice to keep everything aerodynamic. However, we weren't slowing down enough, so I decided to wiggle my craft around to utilize the drag. However, it did drop us into a completely suborbital trajectory, but we actually lucked out, and our apoapsis is now currently at 75 kilometers, which is well above the 50 kilometer atmosphere limit for Laythe, so we can easily plop in a circularization burn, and we put that into flight computer, so it's going to go ahead and handle that automatically. We time warp our way to there, let the engines take over, and given the fact that we have still a significant amount of delta V after a short, well, relatively short for you, relatively short for me, burn, we get ourselves into orbit. So we have successfully arrived at Laythe. Well, Ropon did that single-handedly. Once again, I should have had another engineer on board. I think that would have been great for the mission, considering the fact that Gleber has gone missing, mysteriously vanished. And so, nonetheless, Ropon did it single-handedly. 10 years it has been. It took 10 years and 15 days just to get to the Julian system. And it's going to be a little bit longer before she can meet up with the rest of the crew, because she is indeed going to do the scanning mission that is part of this whole project. Every planet, every moon needs to be fully scanned and analyzed for resources, biome information, anomalies, and altitude and terrain and all that. So we go ahead and get our scanners ready, turn them on at an appropriate altitude of over 500 kilometers above the surface. We are now set to make a perfect scan. So we get our ScanSat map up. Currently there is no information, but as we time warp our way, we can see our space plane follow the orbits. We can go ahead and refocus our view onto Laythe so it's not spinning the camera around as much. And then we're going to go ahead and time warp and allow it to scan. It's going to be a little bit. We're going to have to actually refresh the map before we see any information. So we're just going to go and let it kind of cover as much ground as possible and then see how much we have yet to do. So we can just go ahead and time warp fast. And then when we refresh, we see we actually have quite a bit, but still most of them are under half done. So we are going to need to let it go for a little bit longer. However, we're starting to notice that because of our inclination, we're not exactly 90 degrees. We're kind of off kiltered, which for the most part can be good. It can be helpful to be slightly off from 90, but this is a little too extreme of a distance to be off. So we're going to go ahead and make an inclination change. We have 1300 meters per second delta V, so it's not really much to spend 102.1 on it. So we can go ahead and do that, spend some time, and that's going to change our inclination to now put us on a slightly different path, which means that we are going to hopefully cover the areas that we were missing before. So after time warping forward quite a bit, probably too much, but it doesn't matter. We now have a basically complete map, a high resolution map, a multi-spectral map, a visual high resolution map, an anomaly map, and a biome map. And so there's all the information, quite a few biomes here, and our anomaly is actually fairly close to our current craft where we need to meet up with the rest of the crew. So we're going to drop a waypoint there, name it Anomaly 1 Laythe, and look at that, we are so freaking close. So we're just going to leave this craft up in space for now. In the next episode, in the next Julian program episode, we are going to bring that craft down, rendezvous with this crew, get them aboard, and then we're going to go check out that anomaly because I'm really curious to see it. And hopefully we can beat the POV crowd to the first anomaly. However, I doubt it because they've already discovered theirs on the map. So in the next episode, next week, when we look at the IVA only mode, they will be seeing what that anomaly is. And so they'll probably take that milestone. But nonetheless, I'm excited with how this project is going out. And I hope you are as well. But anyways, that is where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more of the Janus Project. If you did think about subscribing, drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.